I recently played Zombie Army VR, an arcade-style co-op shooter built from the bones of Sniper Elite. As I work in FPS game development, when I play something, I'm not just looking at gameplay, I'm spotting the design choices, tech limits, and shortcuts that most people miss. I tested it across missions, weapons, and UI, trying to figure out if this thing's actually worth your time and money. So, is this a must-play VR experience? Is it worth a spot in your gaming library? Let's find out. Right away, it's obvious Rebellion knows how to get the basics right. Gunplay feels responsive, and on PSVR 2, the haptics bring a physicality most games only gesture at. As someone who spends an unhealthy amount of time reviewing footage frame by frame for trailers, I appreciate the polish. No jank, no wobble cam, no immersion breaking frame drops. That's not easy, especially when you're developing across platforms. But there's a flip side. As the campaign unfolded, I kept waiting for the game to lift off. A set piece, a clever mechanic, a surprise, something that would make me message one of my designers and say, "Yo, this is sick. You don't see this much anymore," but it never came. It's not that Zombie Army VR does anything wrong, it just doesn't try to do much more than the minimum needed to deliver the fantasy. From a gameplay capture standpoint, this is a dream. Guns have satisfying audio punch, reload animations are clean, and when everything kicks off, there's a solid flow to the chaos. You can tell the team built this to look good in motion, and they nailed it. Every explosion, every headshot has a chunky, pulp action feel. I'd wager a lot of their weapon work came straight from the previous Sniper Elite and Zombie Army assets, which is smart. You're not reinventing recoil curves or effect systems for the sake of it. That's the kind of studio logic I respect. Ship it well, then stylize it. From a video production standpoint, the weapons are a pleasure to frame. That said, the variety runs out fast. You've seen the arsenal by the halfway point, and outside of co-op strategy, the weapons don't really evolve much. Now, this is where I started to feel the ceiling. Each mission hits familiar beats. Move through an area, trigger a wave, shoot everything, move again. It's that rinse and repeat rhythm that works well enough in co-op, but solo, the repetition stands out. As someone who works on pacing for trailers and gameplay reveals, I know how critical timing and escalation are. A well-designed mission should have beats, lulls, spikes, reversals, but Zombie Army VR doesn't really build. It stays flat, not broken, just uninspiring. And that kills replay value. When I capture footage, I look for moments that tell a story in 5 seconds. Here, I was digging to find them. Let's talk PSVR 2, because this is where my brain switched into internal studio chat. The version I played looked sharp, runs smooth, and benefits from the hardware, especially the headset rumble and trigger resistance. It's a great showcase of what PSVR 2 can do, but it also feels held back, and I think we all know why. Quest parity. This has become the unspoken compromise of modern VR. You design around the lowest common denominator, usually the Quest 2, and then upscale. And as someone who's been in a pitch meeting where platform parity is discussed, I can tell you, it kills ambition. Suddenly dynamic lighting gets swapped for baked, inventory systems become floating 2D UI instead of diegetic. Interactions get simplified to suit touch controllers and lower CPU overheads. In Zombie Army VR, it's the little things, the static environments, the flat lighting, the simplified graphics. They don't break the game, but they break immersion if you've worked behind the scenes and know what PSVR 2 is truly capable of. The moment the floating inventory popped up, I winced. It's functional, but it kills the vibe. In any trailer or dev diary I've worked on, we obsess over the UI that feels part of the world. Here, it's a sterile overlay that reminds you that you're in a game, and not a hellish alternate World War II. I get it, it's easier to maintain consistency across platforms with 2D solutions, but it's also a missed opportunity. Diegetic UI doesn't just look cooler, feels cooler. Imagine cracking open a crate in World rather than scrolling a flat list. That's the difference between serviceable and memorable, between VR game and VR experience. Now, cards on the table, I played Zombie Army VR solo, as I do with most VR games. So I couldn't test the co-op firsthand, but that's exactly the problem. When a game leans this hard on being better with a buddy, it risks leaving solo players out in the cold, and that's what's happened here. The campaign constantly feels like it was built for chatter over headset mics, not tension, not pacing. There's no AI companion system, no smart difficulty scaling, no solo specific tweaks to make the experience more dynamic on your own. It's just grab a friend or slog it through alone. And whilst I can appreciate the praise the co-op gets, there's nothing clever holding it together. No dual objective missions, revived minigames, or class synergy. Worse still, no crossplay. in 2025, that's a self-inflicted wound. If co-op is the game's backbone, then it should have been supported like one. As it stands, it feels more like a crutch and a shaky one for anyone flying solo. From a cinematic point of view, the enemy designs work. Undead soldiers, flamethrower heavies, occult bosses, great visual variety, but behaviourally, it's a parade. Line up and shoot, occasionally duck, rarely flank. There's no real AI escalation across the campaign. In the studio, we'd call this broadcast gameplay, where the player is always the centre of the stage and enemies exist to sell their power fantasy. That's fine, it's very arcade, but the trouble is that after 2 or 3 hours, it stops feeling thrilling and starts feeling like a loop. More diverse enemy behaviours, even simple dodges, charging types, or group buffs would have added some spice. Instead, everything moves like it's on rails. Probably because, under the hood, it is. I want to give a quick nod to the sound and visual direction though. The audio mix is punchy without being overwhelming, and the art direction continues the zombie army tradition of grimy, grindhouse style chaos. It's visually consistent and very rebellion, but it's also expected. This game doesn't surprise you with its tone. It doesn't use audio to play tricks or trigger unease. There's no diegetic storytelling or environmental voice design that deepens the world. It looks and sounds great, but always plays it safe. For someone like me, who works in branding and shaping a game's face, this matters. Tone is everything, and right now, Zombie Army VR's tone says cool, but not unforgettable. This might sound harsh, but here it is. Once the credits rolled, I didn't really feel pulled back in. No modifiers, no roguelite runs, no persistent rewards or unlock trees. For a game that nails the core feeling, that's a shame. Even something like weekly co-op challenges, visual unlocks or leaderboard modes would help. Not because players demand it, but because VR needs it. The hardware already battles for attention. You have to earn repeat play. If Rebellion updates the game post-launch with extra content, there's room to grow, but right now, it's a one and done for most players. Zombie Army VR is polished, it's fun, it's got style, and for newcomers to VR or casual players looking for co-op carnage, it does the job. But from someone embedded in FPS game development, I see the gaps. I see where the tech could have been pushed further, where design systems could have tied in tighter, and where creative risks could have elevated this from solid to standout. Rebellion clearly knows what they're doing, but this game feels like they settled for good enough. And as someone who spent years trying to push our own projects from good to great, I can't help but wish they'd aimed a little higher. At £25, Zombie Army VR sits in a tricky zone. Not expensive enough to be premium, not cheap enough to feel like a no-brainer. For a co-op focused wave-based shooter that doesn't offer progression systems, unlocks or sandbox depth, £25 invites comparison to heavier hitters like Resident Evil Village VR or Saints and Sinners, which can often both be picked up on a sale for similar price, but offer 10 to 20 plus hours of layered gameplay. If it was £15, it'd sit squarely in a grab it now territory. The expectations shift, it's easier to forgive repetition. Players treat it more like a fun side dish than a full course meal, and casual VR users looking for a weekend blast with a mate would be far more likely to impulse buy.